Welcome, mental health warriors. You are listening to Crafting Mental Health. Welcome, mental health warriors, family, friends. And if you're new to this podcast channel, welcome. So happy to have you here. Hope you will find the information on this channel beneficial. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Just a quick thing. You can now listen to the podcast on different platforms. So if you prefer one over the other, you can now listen to all of them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Deezer, YouTube, and I'm trying to get some more. But for now, those are the channels or the platforms that you can listen at. And if you guys would please go ahead and hit the follow button or the like button or whatever it is that you need to, or the subscribe button, I think is the other one. So whatever button you need to push so that you can get the weekly updates, or if there's any information given, or, to let you know that the new episode is out. So just go ahead and hit that button. And if you guys would like to share the podcast with anyone, please do so. I would love for more people to join the channel and to take part in the conversation. And then also I have a Facebook group that's called Crafting Mental Health Podcast. Just come on in there. It's a public group. And you can join that group and take part in the conversation there. And then obviously you can also send me an email, or you can text me, call me, and I would love to hear from all of you. All right, so this week's episode is going to be about ADHD explained. So I think a lot of people know quite a bit of ADHD when it comes to kids. So I'm going to go over that just a little bit, but I'm going to focus more on ADHD as adults. If you guys want me to do a special episode that just covers kids in depth that has ADHD, let me know and I will gladly get that information out to you guys. So just a disclaimer before I start, I am by no means a professional health provider or a specialist or anything of that sort. I'm just a normal, regular person who I've done the research. I go online, I look things up, and then I come here and tell you guys all about it. So, at the end of the day, you do what is right for you. If you need to go speak to your doctors, do that. Follow your doctor's orders. Like I said, all the information I'm giving you guys are just purely, information of research that I have done. I am by no means a specialist of no sorts. Alrighty. All right, let's get going. Okay, so first things first, what is ADHD? What does it stand for? It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So in children, this basically ADHD is one of the most common neurodevelopmental disorders. And what that means is it has to do with the way the brain grows and develops. That is when ADHD can happen, or can start within children. And a lot of children who are diagnosed as kids with ADHD, it will typically go into adulthood. Now there are studies that have shown that children have grown out of ADHD by the time they get into adulthood, but in some cases, obviously, it keeps going on. So what it looks like in kids is basically they have trouble paying attention in class, or they have trouble controlling their impulses, or meaning they will do something without thinking about how it's going to affect others, or they will do something without thinking of the how it's going to pan out. So they don't have that impulse control. And then they also will be seen as overly active. And, something that I've heard of kids with ADHD, they might be playing on the opposite side of the classroom and look like they're being disruptive and while the teacher is talking, but they are actually paying attention to what that teacher is saying, which is crazy, I know, but, so it makes it hard for them, because if you force them to sit still, then they're not going to be able to focus on what is going on. And as with most mental health disorders, the cause of ADHD, just like all the others or most of the others, is unknown. Scientists and doctors don't really know what causes it. What they have seen is that generic plays a big role. So if a parent has ADHD, then it's highly likely for a child to develop ADHD as well. Sometimes brain injuries in children can cause ADHD, or exposure to environmental risks. The one that I saw was about being exposed to lead in paint and stuff like that. Then also alcohol and tobacco use while mom's pregnant can cause ADHD. Sometimes premature delivery, and also when a baby has a low weight when they are born, those can all be factors into being or developing ADHD. Now, research has shown or said that ADHD, there's not enough research or evidence to show that ADHD is caused by too much sugar or too much watching a television or any of those, make your kid eat less sugar, make your kid eat this, eat that. Those are not reasons for kids to have ADHD. It is not about, watching too much television or eating sugar or playing too much video games. Those are not things that, that can cause ADHD. So, like I said, today's episode, I'm going to, focus more ADHD for adults, or how it affects adults, and simple, easy things, well, maybe not easy, but simple things that a person with ADHD could do to help lessen the effect or lessen the symptoms of ADHD. So, and like I say, if you guys want a full-on episode about ADHD in kids, let me know. I might later on decide to do that in any way, but for today, I am going to strictly focus on ADHD in adults. So, okay, there is about 10 million adults who has ADHD. Now, the research I gathered wasn't saying whether it's just in the U.S. or worldwide, but still 10 million people, that's quite a high number. So there's not a single medical or physical or a generic test that they can do in order to diagnose someone with ADHD. What they do, from my understanding, is when you go to your doctor and you say you want to get tested for ADHD, they will probably, if you go to a primary care doctor, they'll probably send you to a psychologist or psychiatrist, somebody who has the knowledge or the ability to make such a diagnosis. And then you will go through a whole questionnaire of questions that's being asked. I believe they also, give questionnaires to family and friends to, help, narrow down, or not narrow down, but to help mark which symptoms have you had in the past or currently have. And a friend of mine, when she was diagnosed, they asked her mom, was she this way as a child? Was she that way as a child? So it's these checklists that they go through to determine if someone have ADHD. So basically, a diagnosis can just be made by going to your doctor and having, a questionnaire filled out. There's a lot of history things that is involved, and sometimes the symptoms doesn't show up in the doctor's visit. So that's why the doctors will reach out to family and friends to see if these symptoms are present, on other times of a person's life. So I've mentioned in the past that clinicians or psychiatrists or whoever uses a guideline, which is called the DSM-5, which is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And the 5 stands for, it's the 5th edition. So basically this book, it's a huge, thick book. This book has the the list of symptoms that a person needs to show in order to have a diagnosis. Now, like I said, with ADHD, it's not as simple as just checking off these symptoms. There's a lot more to it. And there's also times where doctors need to make sure that other things are not causing these behaviors before a simple diagnosis of ADHD can be made. So there's a lot going into being diagnosed. A doctor's not just going to say, oh, you ADHD. They're actually going to do a lot more intensive, talking with you and talking with family members and doing a medical history and all of those things. But according to the DSM-5, there are 3 presentations of ADHD, meaning 3 categories, if you will. So, for a person to be diagnosed with ADHD, they need to have 5 of the symptoms present. Now, these symptoms can change over time. So what the person may have been like when they were a child could be different than how they are now as adults. So these 3 categories or presentations is called, the first one is ADHD predominantly inattentive presentation. The second one is ADHD predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation. And then the third one is a combination of both. So for the first one, the predominantly inattentive presentation, basically if a person has 5 of these, the following I'm going to list for you guys, if they have 5 of it, then the chances are that they may be diagnosed with ADHD. Of course, taking into consideration all the other things. So the symptoms for predominantly inattentive presentation is they fail to give close attention to details and makes careless mistakes. They have difficulty sustaining attention. They do not appear to listen. They struggle with following through with instructions. They have difficulty with organization. They avoid or dislike tasks that require sustaining mental effort. They have a habit of losing things. They are easily distracted. And then they are forgetful in daily activities. So if a person shows 5 of those symptoms, then they could be diagnosed with ADHD predominantly inattentive presentation, or ADHD predominantly inattentive. So now for the second one, ADHD predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation, a person will have the following symptoms. They will, at least 5 of the following. They fidget with their hands or feet or squirm in their chairs, meaning they can't sit still. They need to fidget all the time. Then the next one is they have difficulty remaining seated. The next thing is that they run about and climb excessively. This is in children, but in adults, they have extreme restlessness. Next one is the difficulty engaging in activities quietly. Then acts as if driven by a motor. Adults will often feel inside as if they are driven by a motor, like you just can't stop. You keep going, keep going, keep going. The next one is they talk excessively, or they will blurt out answers before questions have been completed. So they don't listen all the way. Again, and then the last 2 is difficulty waiting or taking turns, or they interrupt or intrudes upon others. So when someone else is talking, they have a habit of interrupting them. And, listing these symptoms, a lot of times, if a person is diagnosed with ADHD, they can't help themselves when this happens. It's their brain is just taking over, and they don't mean to be rude, or they don't mean to not listen. But unfortunately, that is just what happens. So knowing that someone is ADHD or have ADHD, will help when you do communicate with them and, working with them or, just being with them on a daily basis to understand why they are acting a certain way. So it's not because they're rude. It's just because they struggle with certain things. All right. So now the third one is ADHD combined presentation. So, that's kind of self-explanatory, but basically an individual meets the criteria for both. So there are a lot of people that can diagnose someone with ADHD, as I mentioned before. And it's basically, it is, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians, neurologists, your family doctor could, even clinical social workers can diagnose someone with ADHD. However, if it is important for you, if you go to one of these doctors and ask them, to see if you have ADHD, it is important for you to ask them, how much exposure have they with ADHD? How many people have they seen? What is their training, their experience? All of those things. Because if it's someone who's new to it, you almost want to think that their knowledge is not going to be so advanced as someone who's been dealing with it a lot. I remember when I was looking for a therapist for myself, like I've said before in one of my episodes, I have bipolar too. And, when I was looking for a therapist, the main thing that I was looking for is for therapists who, that's one of their specialities, if you will, that they treat people with bipolar. Because some people just, some therapists are good with treating people with anxiety or treating people with depression or treating people with, whatever issues they have. But, funny enough, I didn't find that many therapists who actually have experience with people with bipolar. So I was very selective to find a therapist who actually has the experience to treat someone with bipolar, because they need to understand what it is that you're going through. They need to understand what your daily life is. And if that's not something that they are used to dealing with, then how can they be able to give you advice or help or anything like that? So ask those questions, and if you see a doctor and they tell you that they don't have a whole lot of experience, don't worry about hurting their feelings to say, hey, I'm going to go find another doctor, or even, hey, I'm going to go get a second opinion. If you feel that you're not being heard, you need to advocate for yourself. I've mentioned this several times before. And, so make sure that you get to the right doctor and the right therapist and, advocate for yourself. You know what is right for you and what feels comfortable for you. Like I've mentioned before, I've switched out psychiatrists because the first one I had, her and I just didn't gel. She works great for other people, which is great. But for me, it just didn't work. So I found a new psychiatrist, and this new psychiatrist is a lot better for me, and I feel way more comfortable with her. But I'm sure there are people that she's treating that may not feel that comfortable. So like I said, make sure that you advocate for yourself and ask questions. The more questions you ask, the more information you will get. And if a doctor doesn't want to give you the time to answer all your questions, then it's time to find a new doctor. Because, like I said, you advocate for yourself. And if they can give you the time of day to answer all your questions and make you comfortable with what it is that you're going through, then you need to find a doctor who will. There are doctors out there. Okay? So, the next thing I want to talk about is, things that, like I've list all those things that that's part of the symptoms of adults having ADHD. So now there are several different things that in the workplace, how these symptoms can cause difficulties, so and so I'm going to kind of list a bunch of them and then also give some ideas or tips or things that you could potentially do to help minimize the symptoms. In some cases, again, you can take medication, you can go to talk therapy. There's a lot of different therapies that you can use. A friend of mine who's diagnosed with ADHD, I know she's very much into holistic stuff, and she will research what kind of supplements to take and all of those things. So again, you do what works for you. Okay. So in the workplace, if one of your symptoms is distractibility, you have problems with external distractions, noises and movements in your surrounding area. There was once I was working in an office setting where we all had cubicles, and the way my desk was angled, every time somebody moved past my desk, it would distract me. And then I would lose concentration, and it would distract me. And then I have to start all over again. So I ended up just kind of pivoting my table a little bit so that those distractions don't happen. So simple fix, right? So some things that you can do to help with distractibility is you can ask for a private office. Probably not going to happen, but you could ask. Or you can ask for a quieter cubicle. Like my cubicle that I had was like on the end, and it was right by the main aisle. So in my case, I could have asked to be moved to a different cubicle where it will have less distractions. Those things you can ask for. Now, I do not have ADHD, not as far as I know, but like I've said before in one of my episodes, ADHD and bipolar has a lot of similar symptoms. Okay, so a lot of the symptoms that people with ADHD have, people with bipolar has the same symptoms. All right, so that's why I said distractibility is one of my problems. I get distracted. Y'all, I have squirrels running all over the place. Okay, so I know you guys heard that joke, like, you like a dog, squirrel, go there, go there. Some days my brain is all over the place. All right. So, finding ways to be less distractive is a good thing. So another thing you can do with distractibility is you can get earphones and play white noise through your earphones, or you can listen to classical music, or, anything to just drown out the noises in the office that will cause, distractions. I know in my current job, even though I have my own office, in my current job, I have to listen to music in order to focus on whatever it is I'm doing. And I can listen to any kind of music. I just have to listen to music. Now, I know people who can't listen to music because they get distracted by the music, but they can listen to podcasts. Now, in my case, I cannot listen to a podcast while working. I can only listen to music because I get too distracted about what's going on in the podcast or what's going on in the audiobook or whatever. So again, you need to find out what works for you. Okay. You can also ask if you can work in a unused space in the office, like a conference room, or, anywhere that it's less distractive, where there's less people, with less noise. Okay. You can also, if you need to block out a section of time for the day that you need to focus on, you can route your phone calls to go directly to voicemail, and you can respond to them later. This way, you can put out that 2 hours of time so you can focus on what it is that you're working on, and you can answer the phone calls later. Okay, I've done that before. Then you can also jot down ideas in a notebook to avoid interruptions on the current task. So whenever your own mind gets distracted, you just write it down so you can focus back onto what you were doing. And something like that also happened to me is like, while I'm sitting in a meeting, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea to do for this project. That's a good idea to do for that project. And in order to keep those ideas, with you and not keep focusing on those ideas, you can write them down, make a list, so that after the meeting, you can go and spend time on those ideas. And then important, and I know sometimes this is hard to do, but perform one task at a time. Do not start a new task until the current one is done. Y'all, that one's going to be hard, but I'm going to try. Okay. All right. So the second symptom is impulsivity. So adults with ADHD may struggle with impulsivity or temper outbursts in the workplace. And, obviously you don't want to be the one who has a temper outburst in the workplace because, that's just a kind of a bad look, So, things that you can do to help with impulsivity, like how you can try and combat that symptom, is you can learn to use self-talk to monitor your impulse actions. So if you get angry real quick or you have a temper outburst, you can learn to talk yourself off the ledge. Like make sure you start counting or start doing a breathing exercise, whatever it is that you need to do. Okay. When you go see your therapist or an accountability partner, whoever, you guys can role play, to have appropriate responses when you're in a frustrating situation. So, when you know that a certain situation is going to get you fired up and you're going to have one of those outbursts, if you have had a role play session with someone where you figured out what the correct response would be, then you come in prepared. So then you will be prepared to do the right thing. Okay. Another thing you can do to help with impulsivity is you can ask your coworkers for regular constructive feedback so that you can see how they perceive you. You can see what are the things that triggers you. And you can be more aware of how your impulsivity might be manifesting in you. All right. Another thing you can do is, like I've said before, you can practice relaxation, just breathing in. You can do meditation techniques, just a lot of things to just calm your mind and calm your body. When you start getting frustrated or heated, you can just do things to calm your mind. And it is okay to tell someone in a moment like, hey, I need a moment to go collect myself, and then walk away and go breathe, because rather walk away and have that person wait for a response from you than blowing up in their face. Right? So it is okay to ask a coworker like, listen, this is not going anywhere, or this is getting too much. I need a moment, and then walk away, because you are responsible for your own actions. Okay. You can't control anybody else's actions. You can only control your own. So then another thing that you can do is, you can go and figure out what are your triggers. What things in the workplace will trigger you to have, impulsive reactions or doing impulsive things. And then once you know the things that trigger you, you can either find ways to cope with them or to avoid them, of course. Okay. So another symptom, or the third symptom, is hyperactivity. And a good job for someone who has this symptom is to be in a job where you move around a lot. Because if you're hyperactive, then you can't sit still. So if you have a job that makes you move around a lot, like think about guys that's on a car dealership sales floor. They go in from here to there, and they are very busy, or they don't sit down a lot. So you can be active around your job. Okay. So, but in some cases, unfortunately, you have a job where you're sitting behind a desk. So what do you do in those instances to help you with your hyperactivity? Okay. So you can make sure that you take breaks. If you need a break, take a break. If you feel like you need to start walking around, find something that needs to be photocopied, or need to go pick up, go get a drink from the water fountain, go walk around, a lap around, the floor or something. Just make sure you take a break so you can get that energy out. Okay. Something else that you can do while you're in a meeting, because in a meeting, you don't want to be fidgeting. You can make sure that you take notes. Even though you're going to remember everything that's being said in the meeting, if you take notes, that keeps you busy. It helps you with, it prevents restlessness. Something else that you can do is you can have a standing desk. when you're standing behind your desk, then you can kind of move around one foot over, from one foot to the other foot. I know that helps my husband with, when he's working, because he's sitting behind a desk all day long. He got a standing desk, and that helps him, with his hyperactivity. And, so you can move around, you can exercise, you can take walks, you can go up and down the stairs, anything just to burn that hyperactiveness. Okay. And then, you can bring, instead of, going to lunch every day, bring your own lunch so you can eat it at your desk real quick. And then you have a whole hour time or 45 minutes to go and exercise. Like when I had the office job, we had a pond, and you could walk around the pond. And if I remember correctly, like if you walk 3 times around the pond, it's a mile that you've walked. So, just walk around the pond, get some exercise, and, being outside, you would also get not just exercise, but you get sunshine, which will help. You get fresh air, of course, that would help. All right. So those are things that you can do to help with the symptom of hyperactivity. The next symptom is poor memory. I struggle with that one. I remember, not necessarily forget deadlines and things like that. I just forget conversations. That's my biggest thing. I forget conversations or things that I've done. Okay. So, but in the workplace, you can struggle to remember deadlines, or or you struggle to remember other responsibilities that you have. And this could cause some tension between you and your coworker, especially when you are working in a team environment. So things that you can use to avoid these problems would be, you can use your phone to record the conversation, or to help take notes. Now, if you record a conversation, make sure you let the person know that you are recording the conversation, and just tell them why. You just tell them that you want to make sure that you keep track of what it is that you need to be doing. Some people might feel weird about being recorded, so make sure that you let them know that you are recording the conversation. All right. So the next thing you can do is you can write a checklist, a to-do list. That's what I would call it. And then you can check it off. Okay, I got to do this, this, and this. And you can even then make notes and says which ones are more important than others. This way you won't forget to do these things. Something that I do at my current job, because like I said, poor memory is one of my problems that I have quite a lot of. And, as soon as I need to put a reminder for myself to do something, I put it on my calendar. So, I don't have to remember like, oh, okay, in 2 weeks, I need to call this person back. I put it on my calendar on my computer, and then I will be reminded. So it's just making sure that in that moment, I put that note out. And, guys, what I've also done now, because I've gotten the notification of something that I need to do, and then it pops up and it says follow up with so-and-so. And then I have no idea what I need to follow up with, because I don't remember. So what I've started doing is I attach the email that goes with it. So therefore I have the information right there, and I can easily follow up. You can use a day planner. I've tried those in the past, and they didn't really work out too well for me, but for some people they will work. Alrighty. Then also, this is one I use a lot. Sticky notes. Those are the best things ever to remember things. I write sticky notes everywhere. I mean, it kind of looks interesting when you see my desk. But eventually, sometimes when the tasks are done, I will pick them up and throw them away. So the next symptom is boredom blockouts. So basically what this is, people with ADHD, because they have this strong need for stimulation, they get bored with mundane, repetitive tasks like detailed paperwork or routine tasks. Okay. And then they get bored, and then they have trouble focusing on those. So something that you can do in the workplace for that is you can set a timer to stay on task. So you can set out, okay, I'm going to work on this project for the next hour, and then you're going to break it up and go do something else. Or you're going to set a timer and work on that, and then go take a walk and come back and set another hour. Just break it up so that it's not as daunting to do this long, boring task, but you've broken it up into smaller things. Something that I've started doing, well, it's more at home that I do this than at work. But if I know I have to clean the house and I need to do my podcast, or I need to do research for the podcast, or I need to, do whatever, do chores, if you will, because it's the same thing over and over, I get bored real quick. So something that I've started doing at home is, my crafting is my reward. So I am not allowed to sit down and do my crafting until I have done the chores. So that helps me to stay on task and not get bored. Okay. Something else that you can do at work to help with boredom blockouts is to find a job that is stimulating, that the responsibilities is something that stimulates your mind, or that doesn't have so much things that's just a routine over and over the same thing. Find a job that works for you. Alrighty. So the next symptom is time management difficulties. This is a big one for me as well. It can be a big challenge for most adults with ADHD is time management. Just because you get overwhelmed with it. So something that you can use is a timeline chart to break up your projects into smaller bite-sized pieces with step-by-step due dates. So I got to finish this by this date, and I got to finish that by that date. So therefore you have, instead of one big project, you have a bunch of small little projects with smaller due dates. And I do that at work as well. And obviously, like I've just mentioned in the previous symptom, that's kind of what I do with my regular things at home as well. So yeah, you can reward yourself for achieving each due date. There's nothing better than a reward. And sometimes you can also use alarms or buzzers or planners on your computer that will help you stay on task. You can schedule, I know with Outlook, you can schedule your appointments to, 5 minutes before the appointment starts, it will ding. So it will remind you, hey, you got an appointment in 5 minutes. So you got to go do what you need to do so you can be ready for your appointment. Something that happens to me at work is, because I'm hourly, I have to clock out and clock back in. A lot of times I clock out, but I still keep on working. But then I forget to clock back in. So what I've started doing is I will clock out, and then I will put a alarm on my phone to go off to remind me to clock back in. Okay. And vice versa, clock back out too, because I'm horrible with that. I'm really trying. And then, avoid overscheduling your calendar, Make sure you if you need to, put even blocks on your calendar to say, okay, this is going to be a break time. Put breaks in there for yourself so people don't schedule meetings over your break time. And it is okay to say no to a meeting. A lot of people think like, okay, if a meeting comes on my calendar, I have to do it. I have to accept this meeting. You can select a meeting and say, here's an alternative time that will work a little bit better for me. Even if it means you postpone the meeting with 15 minutes, just so you can have 15 minutes in between two meetings. Obviously, if this is a meeting with a higher up in leadership, you want to consider that. But I'm just saying, it is okay to ask for a different time. Not saying that I don't want to do the meeting, just saying like, hey, can we do it at a different time? Because some people don't look at other people's calendars when they schedule meetings. They just schedule meetings willy-nilly, and they don't care about other people's calendars. So in those instances, then you can say, hey, can we have this meeting at a different time that will work better for you? Okay. Again, advocate for yourself. All right. So the next symptom is procrastination. Yes. Y'all, if you ever want to see a funny video or not a funny video, it's just a video that explains procrastination. There's this cool video on YouTube about procrastination where this guy explains exactly what procrastination is. And y'all, this is like totally me to a T, and it's hilarious. Because he's talking about it, this monkey on your back and whatever. Anyway, maybe I'll talk about procrastination one day on its own. But yeah, so back to the point, procrastination. So you're putting things off, And, and then it can sometimes create problems for others. If you don't get your portion done, others can't do theirs. So, or what will happen too is if you keep putting things off, you end up with a whole bunch of stuff that's due at the same time. So what you can do in the workplace or at home even to prevent procrastination, or at least help alleviate it, is, again, break your task into smaller pieces. Reward yourself along the way so that, so that it makes it easier for you to complete to complete the tasks as you are doing them. And, with me, I know that having a deadline set by somebody else helps me stay on task way easier than just saying, okay, this needs to get done at some point. So I normally ask my boss when he asks me to do something for him, I'm like, when do you want me to complete this by? And my boss has now learned that he gives me, say, in 2 weeks from now, even though it might not be 2 weeks. But then for me, it's like, okay, this needs to be done in 2 weeks and I'm going to get it done in 2 weeks. And so you can ask your boss or your supervisor to give you deadlines for your tasks. Okay, so the next symptom is having trouble with paperwork or with details. And, it can be that you struggle to find paperwork or files when your boss asks you for it. And that can give the impression of carelessness and that you have bad filing skills or whatever. So, you can make it a rule to only handle a piece of paper or a paper one time, meaning if you get the paper right now, then you do with what you need to do with it and then you file it. Okay. And sometimes it's easier said than done, I know, but try and handle the piece of paper as least amount of possible. You can also try to make filing your papers more fun by color coding your files, or if you have actual physical papers, you can color code your files, or you can use catchy labels or those kind of thing. For me, I know I struggle with filing spreadsheets in the correct file or filing emails. So again, you can use different names for your folders just to make it more fun and make it easier to keep up with where you put your documents or your spreadsheets or whatever it is that you need to keep track of. Because the last thing you want is your boss asking you like, hey, where is such and such a document? And you're like, I don't know. Or hold on, let me look for it. You want to make sure you have those things readily available whenever they ask. I know sometimes it's hard. We all struggle with keeping track of our stuff. But, if you take active measures to get better with these things, then that will help. All right. And the last symptom that I'm going to touch on for the workplace is having social skill issues or interpersonal skills or issues with that. And what that just means is sometimes people with ADHD have a hard time realizing that they're unintentionally offending a coworker because they might interrupt them frequently, or they might be talking too much, or they might be too blunt. That's my problem. Or they might not be listening well. Okay. So if social skills is a challenge for you, you can try these following things. So, you can ask, from a trusting coworker, for feedback, especially if you have a history of, offending people. You can ask for feedback on how you handle the situation or how you handle the conversation, that kind of thing. And this way you can start realizing where it is that you need work, where it is that you need to focus on your skills, so you can sharpen your skills. You can learn to pick up on social skills, because sometimes you can, offend people and not even realize it because you're not picking up on the social skills. This is something that you can work with your therapist on. You guys can role play. so you can just learn to read social skills better. Yes, these things are going to take time, and are you going to be perfect at it from the beginning? No, it's going to take time. You're going to offend people. It will be okay. And if you're working with great people, then they will understand. Okay. And then you can also try and ask or look for a job where you're more working by yourself instead of a team aspects. This way you won't, have to worry about, offending someone in a team environment. So, but if you do have to work in a team environment, like I said, then you can ask for feedback, or you can, you can even have a conversation with your team prior and say, hey guys, I know I have a problem and I apologize up front. And in the event that I come across as too blunt, or I keep interrupting you or whatever, if you can ask their help. Some people will be really open to you help, to offer their help. Like when you interrupt them, they can say, hey, hold on, let me finish talking, and then you can talk. And that would be a cue for you, like, oh snap, I was talking when it's not my turn. So there are things that you can do. And I believe like being honest and open about how you, with struggles that you have will help you in the workplace. And I know that there are workplaces out there where being open and honest is not always the best. When I'm saying being open and honest, I'm talking about being open and honest about your struggles with mental health. That's when, some instances you don't want to talk about it. And some instances it has made life easier for people to be open and honest. So you know what is best for you. Like I said, you have to advocate for yourself. You know what's best for you. And you know what you are comfortable with. All right. So yes, guys, so that wraps up the things that I wanted to talk with you guys about. I hope these, suggestions will help some in the workplace. And I hope that, you guys learned something today. Like I've said before, if you have any questions or you need someone to talk to, or you just want to hang out, let me know. I'm here. You can find me on all those different platforms. You can find me on Facebook, and I will be happy to connect with you guys. And then until next week, you guys, I love you. Thank you for joining in every week, and I hope you all have a great week. Thanks. Bye.